quotes, infused with the scent of potpourri, the films we commit to memory. Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer, a weekly podcast reviewing 2 new or recent release titles every episode with an occasional free-for-all segment at the end that we call Potpourri. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and you can find more of my work, including my written reviews, full episode show notes, and the complete backlog of our episodes and spin-off podcasts at obsessiveviewer.com. You can also email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com and follow me on Letterboxd at obsessiveviewer. And if you'd like to support us and get access to hundreds of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. We have book reviews, movie reviews, TV episode reviews, movie commentary tracks, B-roll recordings, audio tests, because I'm neurotic and weird. Recently on Patreon, I am deep in the thick of Severance Season 2 episode reviews. They come up every Friday. Last week's episode was kind of a game changer. I loved it, and I start that recording with giggling after the theme music because I was just so giddy about the episode. So that's up on Patreon, and I also will, by the time you guys are listening to this on the main feed, hopefully, I will have companion reviews for this week's episode. I'll be reviewing The Day the Earth Stood Still remake from 2008 and Scare Me from 2020. That is the companion review episode for this episode that you're listening to. And I will also hopefully finally have my January monthly wrap-up recording where I talk about my first viewings and stats for the month on Patreon for the $10 patrons for that one. Once again, you can sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for all of that and a bunch more content. And if you want to support me without messing with Patreon, you can always buy me a coffee with the link in the show notes of this episode, or you can just go to buymeacoffee.com/obsessiveviewer. Okay, so tonight on the show, I'm going to be reviewing the new Scott Derrickson Apple TV Plus movie, The Gorge, which comes out this week on Apple TV Plus, in this week's secondary review. But before that, we're going to go over some movie news before we review the new Valentine's Day slasher from Josh Rubin, Hard Eyes, in this week's feature review. And joining me once again, the second consecutive week, is my friend and IFJA colleague whose work can be found at MidwestFilmJournal.com, and he can be followed on Letterboxd at the handle of Sam Movie Man. It is Sam Watermeier. Welcome back to the show, Sam. How's it going, and how are you not sick of me yet?
First, thank you for having me.
Of course.
This is the second of 20 consecutive appearances.
Yes.
And yes, I did say consecutive. I'm sure you have other guests lined up, and I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm replacing them
Nice.
for the next 18 episodes.
Nice.
No, man, I always have a blast doing this. I never get sick of it. So
Nice.
I'm happy to be on again, and I'm happy to give some love to Hard Eyes in advance of Valentine's Day weekend.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's a Valentine's Day themed horror movie, and hopefully it'll build an audience this weekend.
Yeah. I hope so too. I think it's gonna be a good conversation because I'm curious how the conversation is going to shake out, which you did review it on MidwestFilmJournal.com, which I'll put a link in the show notes, of course. And I mean, you were on the show last week, so you also reviewed Companion and Presence on Midwest Film Journal, which links in the show notes and everything. Yeah. Anything else you've done recently in the last 7 days?
Well, not in the last 7 days, but I just want to plug another thing. Midwest Film Journal is continuing its kind of ongoing partnership with the Society of Professional Journalists. And we just had a piece in there quarterly magazine. It's called Quill.
Hmm.
It's about basically some of the best journalist focused documentaries of the 2020s so far.
Nice.
So you can check that out at quillmag.com. Just wanted to plug that real quick.
Very nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So is that like because I know that you guys kind of collaborate with them for like this growing massive list of journalism movies in general. I know that that's kind of a communal effort with Midwest Film Journal and Quill. Is this the same kind of thing where it's like people from Midwest Film Journal like putting forth like documentaries, or was this like a piece that you wrote for them, or how did that work out?
Oh yeah, this is a collaborative piece.
Nice.
With four of the Midwest Film Journal contributors, myself, Evan Dawsey, Nick Rogers, and Mitch Ringenberg, and Lou Harry from the Indiana Film Journalists Association. He's the editor of Quill magazine, and he pulled us in to write capsule reviews of a few standout documentaries that focus on journalism efforts. For example, there's one about the Athlete A.
Oh yeah.
About the Indy Star team that broke the news of the U.S. Olympics sort of sex abuse scandal, I guess, is what you would say. So the partnership started with the 110th anniversary of the Society of Professional Journalists. And to kind of ring that in, we did a list of the 110 best and worst journalism focused movies.
Nice.
And that original list has everything from, All the President's Men to not so good stuff like Woody Allen's Scoop. Brenda Starr is another kind of maligned journalism movie. And we've been continually updating that list and growing it. And yeah, I think it's up to like 210 movies.
Wow.
And those are narrative films. So we wanted to do something about documentaries, which brought about this latest list.
Nice.
So yeah, it's cool. It's a cool project that I always look forward to, and I'm grateful to be part of the group. And it's a cool, if you're in the mood for a journalism movie, it's a good place to go. Is that batch of articles.
Nice. Well, that's very cool. I will, of course, put links in the show notes, as you guys know. Yeah. Do you want to hear about things that I'm excited about that are playing in Indy this week in the next segment?
Absolutely.
Nice. So as you guys know, I've been doing this, playing this week in Indy. So local movie theaters like Alamo Drafthouse, Can, Living Room Theaters, Keystone Art, Flix Brewhouse, they have stuff that's going on, kind of specialty screenings. So in the coming weeks, or in the next week or so, over at the Alamo Drafthouse, they're having a movie party for The Wedding Singer on February 20th. Which I have not seen in like 10, 12 years probably, since our Summer of Sandler series in like 2014. So I want to go to one of these movie parties that they have at Alamo. I will at some point, but they also...
Is a wedding taking place there?
I don't think so. Like, it is just the, they have special screenings that they dub movie parties at the Alamo. So I think it's like you can dress up, and like I don't know if it's necessarily like a rowdy screening, but it's it's not your grandfather's movie party, if you know what I mean, which I don't even know what I mean.
What's my grandfather's movie party?
I don't know. Yeah, no idea. So
I'm sorry, continue.
Oh,
I'm
no,
sorry.
you're good. They are also on February 27th, they're showing Dolomite Is My Name, which is pretty cool because that was a Netflix movie that I don't know if it was actually in theaters when it came out in like 2020. So that's at Alamo. And over at the Can, they are, as we said last week, this weekend they're showing Wild at Heart. And then there was another one I wanted to talk about that they were just announced. Okay, so on February 18th for $10 Tuesday, they are doing Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, over at the Can. So I'll put links in the show notes and everything. But that's pretty cool. And then... I mentioned last week that Keystone Art is showing The Departed on February 18th, and Flix Brewhouse is showing Notting Hill on Valentine's Day and the 18th. And then the final thing that I want to bring up for this segment is that the Waiting Game documentary that I celebrated on the podcast, I interviewed the director, Michael Hussein, and our critics group, the IFJ, awarded him the Hoosier Award this year, this previous couple months ago. The Waiting Game is going to have a Black History Month screening at Newfields in Indianapolis on February 28th at 6 p.m. I will put a link to the Facebook event page in the show notes. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out at Newfields. Go support them and go see it. And added bonus, that's where I saw it. So if you go see The Waiting Game on February 28th, you can think, Matt Hurt saw this here too. So that's February 28th at Newfields. Sam, any thoughts on any of these? So Star Trek II Wrath of Khan, Yes.
Classic, love it. Why is that the one that is always shown as like a special screening?
That's a good question. I would wager a guess that it would probably be because it is maybe the most well respected, if not biggest box office one, at least of the like non JJ movies.
Yeah, that's true. I guess if you're trying to reel in audiences, like that's probably the best one to do so. But I'd love to see a screening of like First Contact or like Generations, maybe
The Undiscovered Country.
I mean, at least Generations, like you have Patrick Stewart and William Shatner.
Yeah.
So like I think that would draw people in.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It seems like every time there's a special screening, it's often Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
I've been to a midnight show of Wrath of Khan at the Keystone. Yeah. Nice. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I just wonder why they don't dip into the other movies in the franchise at all.
Yeah, same here. That's a good question. I will harass the Can and get an answer for you.
I mean, it's fine if you don't.
In all caps email, Sam Watermeier demands to know.
Why no First Contact?
Yes. So that's all I've got for what's playing in indie this week. I do have a couple of news items to run down before we get into our featured review of Hard Eyes. Sam, do you want to talk some movie news with me here for a brief moment here?
Yeah, let's do news before the reviews, baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like, we've got that a clean drop now, so I'll use that. So we've got a few trailers. Obviously, the Super Bowl was this week. I watched the entirety of the Super Bowl. I'm not like an NFL guy. I don't really follow sports or anything. I know the game. I know what it is. I'm not like one of the sports balls people, but it was really entertaining. It was really good. Did you watch the Super Bowl, and what did you think of the halftime show and any trailers or commercials or anything?
I did watch the Super Bowl for the first time in over 20 years.
Wow.
I think the last time I watched it was when the Colts played back in 2007,
something like that.
So I was in high school. It was fun.
I was working a full-time job.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
Yes.
I graduated in 2005, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, everyone, listeners out there is an age difference between us.
Yes.
Now you know. But it was cool to watch it this time because we had a few friends over who wanted to watch it on our projector screen.
Nice.
So it was cool to get the big game on the big screen. I thought the halftime performance was spectacular.
Nice.
I was happy to know that it probably provoked many people, including a certain public figure who was there at
Yes.
the game.
Our hearts go out to Taylor.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
That was smooth. In terms of the commercials, the Seal commercial really took a dump on my childhood. That was just an awful perversion of Kiss from a Rose.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So I'll just skip to the movie trailers. I think Jurassic World, Rebirth looks like a lot of fun.
It does. It does. I did not care for Jurassic World, any of that trilogy really, especially Dominion, but I think because the first Jurassic Park, and I've wrestled with this for years, but the first Jurassic Park is it's not only one of my all-time favorite movies, it is one of the first movies I remember seeing in a movie theater. And I remember the hype around it and everything. So that is so, it is so a part of my, DNA. Thank you. That it's fascinating to me that there are 6, now going to be 7 movies in this franchise, and I really only love one of them.
Yeah,
it's so strange, but yeah, all that's to say, the trailer looks interesting, the plot looks interesting, and I mean, I will always root for Jurassic Park as a franchise. I will always hope that it's going to be good, which should be the standard for anything I watch, but yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I could really take or leave. Well, I don't want to say that. I do enjoy The Lost World. I enjoy Jurassic Park 3. I think if I'm being honest, though, I probably could take or leave all of the sequels in the sense that I wouldn't be devastated to lose any of them.
Right.
The original is a classic, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah.
The definition of movie magic. And all the sequels are okay to really bad.
Yeah.
But this one, I think I like the idea of going back to the research facility that spawned Jurassic Park. I like the idea of them having to get specimens from 3 big dinosaurs. Like that's a cool mission.
Yeah.
So I'm into it. Trying to think what the other big movie trailers were. Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
The Final Reckoning. Will it be Ethan Hunt's Final Reckoning?
I mean, if Tom Cruise is passing out while filming it, like I feel like he should probably hang it up.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Mission Impossible movies.
Oh, me too.
At the same time, though, like it's I guess I would say the same about Jurassic Park World. It's okay to end a franchise, I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like they don't have to go on forever.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was, I'm sure that this was played during it, but I'm also sure that you probably don't have much interest in it, but the Fantastic Four, the First Steps trailer came out. Any thoughts on that? This kind of retrofuturism look at the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I mean, looks fine. I guess it's hard to be excited about what the third iteration of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I'm sure it'll be fun and fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm being a Scrooge about it.
Oh no, you're good.
I guess I can't honestly say like, what? That blew me away. Like, looks fine.
Yeah. One other trailer I want to talk about that's not related to the Super Bowl. It came out today. It's A24's Friendship, starring Tim Robinson and Paul Rudd. This trailer, like, it frustrates me just because it says like it's coming out in May, but it doesn't have like a specific date. I know it's going to be at South by Southwest next month, but like I want to make sure that I earmark the date that it's going to come out because it's one I'm going to want to review on the show. So yeah, but it looks incredible. What did you think?
Oh yeah, I'll say I'm more excited about this movie than any of the bullshit I just talked about.
Nice.
This movie looks incredible.
Very nice.
Our mutual friend and colleague Mitch Rangenberg said something great about this one, which is that it looks like the Cable Guy if it were from Jim Carrey's perspective.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just looks like a really awkward, cringy take on friendship. And I love Tim Robinson.
Oh my God. Me too.
He makes me laugh like an idiot. I love Paul Rudd. And honestly, this is like probably my most anticipated movie of the year right now.
Same here. I was having the thought while watching the trailer that like I was aware of the movie, I think, just in the periphery, the last, like whenever it was first announced or whatever. But like, this is the type of experience watching this trailer where I'm thinking that like a year ago or like at the end of last year when I'm putting together my top 10 and looking at like, oh, what movies in the next year am I going to like, I always have the thought like, it's so crazy that like in 2024, I have no idea what my top 10 of 2025 will look like. Like I have movies that are on my radar and that I'm very excited about, but like there's always going to be multiple movies that I'm not even aware of. Like, perfect example, not to say that Friendship is going to be the same as this, but like at the end of 2023, I did not know what I Saw the TV Glow even was. Like, I didn't know that Jane Schoenbrunn had another movie in the pipeline. I wasn't even that big of a huge fan of We're All Going to the World's Fair. And then I Saw the TV Glow was my movie of the year last year. And like, I just love that feeling of seeing like a trailer for a movie that I'm not fully aware of because like it's one thing to like, oh, Jurassic World Rebirth, The Fantastic Four, Mission Impossible, like these are blockbusters, these are big franchise things, these are event movies that we know the release date of, you know, years ago and like are anticipating in a different way. But like Friendship is just like, oh shit, this is going to be good. And it wasn't even something that was on my radar, and I'm just really excited about that.
I'm happy to know that I'm not the only one who will look up movies coming out in the next year.
Oh yeah,
like, try to guess which ones will click with me. Like,
yes,
I mean, usually it's like big time directors that I look out for, but yeah, I'll like at the end of a year, I'll go into the next year and try to predict like what the Oscar movies will be. And
nice.
It's super dorky and like, but I'm happy to know I'm not alone in doing that.
No, I totally get that, and I love doing that, and I love that because there will also be movies like in the run up to awards season where it's like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but like movies like, I guess like Tesla, I want to say it was Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm not sure, but a biopic about Nikola Tesla that came out in like 2020. So granted 2020, but like, I remember that came out and like, I remember like looking up something like randomly and being like, I forgot that movie existed. And like, I looked it up and I was like, did I review it on the podcast or anything? Like, I wrote a full ass review on the website and like,
oh, wow.
I had forgotten that the movie even existed. And like,
that's amazing.
It's just so weird. Like, the movie's not good, but like,
yeah,
it's just weird that like clearly like it is this kind of like big like biopic movie that is clearly like marketed as maybe an Oscar contender, and then like it's something that just didn't. Oh, it was Ethan Hawke. Something that just did not even leave a blip on my radar. Yeah,
that is funny.
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah. But anyway, yeah. So Friendship trailer looks good. Very excited. And then a couple other quick news items. One is of particular interest to you, I believe, because you're a huge fan of Cape Fear.
Oh, yes.
I have not seen Cape Fear.
Either version?
Either version. So I need to fill those gaps. But it was announced today that Amy Adams is going to star opposite Javier Bardem in Apple TV Plus's Cape Fear, I think maybe a limited series. Yeah. How do you feel about this and the idea of a Cape Fear show?
I think it's a great idea. I love Martin Scorsese's remake.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially satisfying, and I'm sure the series will do this as well, in how it makes the family very dysfunctional and like they're not the steady rock at the center of the movie. Like they're all kind of falling apart while this killer is terrorizing them. And I'm sure the series will be similar in that sense. I certainly hope it is. I think Javier Bardem is great casting. As iconic as Robert De Niro is, I think he can certainly has the chops to fill those shoes. Has the husband character been cast yet?
I don't know. Let me see. Oh, geez. Let's see. In the series, married attorneys Anna, played by Adams, and Tom Bowden are in peril when. Okay, no. I do not believe that the husband has been cast.
Those are big shoes to fill too. Nick Nolte's great in the remake, and I can see it working as a series because of how much goes on with the family. Like, he's kind of adulterous. His character is a lawyer in the movie, and it kind of digs into his past malfeasance as a lawyer and some other sketchy things he's done, and his wife kind of veers into alcoholism, and his teenage daughter, played by Juliette Lewis, becomes kind of promiscuous, and I can see a series having a lot of directions to go. So I'm glad that it's, with some series you think like, oh, there's going to be a lot of filler here, but
yeah,
Cape Fear is there's a lot of interesting territory to explore with it.
Nice. That's interesting. I really need to fill those gaps. The article says Cape Fear will consist of 10 episodes and, per the official logline, be a, quote, tense Hitchcockian thriller with and an examination of America's obsession with true crime in the 21st century. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a cool angle to take on it.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we will keep everyone posted as more news develops. And the final piece of news before we get to our review is it was announced today that Paul Giamatti and Radio Silence are going to team up for a biopic on paranormal radio host Art Bell. This is a movie that is going to be coming out at a certain point in time in the future. And what's interesting is, like, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because like all I saw was like Paul Giamatti and Radio Silence biopic and radio host, and I was like, that's kind of a weird pivot for Radio Silence, who've been like existing in like this genre space, horror space and everything. But then I didn't realize who Art Bell was, and it kind of just threw me for like a nostalgic like loop, because for those who don't know, like from Deadline, it says the pitch is a biopic about the late paranormal DJ Art Bell, who would broadcast his radio show from his home studio 65 miles west of Las Vegas, fielding unscreened telephone calls in a 5-hour show on KNYE FM called Coast to Coast. I remember like listening to Coast to Coast, like I think like my dad would listen to it a lot. And like, it's such a weird thing to unlock in my brain. Cause like, I remember thinking like, this is so weird and creepy. And like, it was back when I was like, oh, these things are real. Probably. And like, it was just like, this has me excited. Like, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, I'm really excited too. I had no idea who Art Bell was. And it'll be cool to see like the birth of the kind of show that is now, I guess, in podcast form.
Yeah.
Like, kind of the like podcast before the podcasts. And it sounds like it might be kind of like Ed Wood-esque, or maybe more serious. Like, I don't know, but it sounds like he interviewed a lot of strange people who had encounters with the paranormal. And I think, I mean, I'm always on board for watching Paul Giamatti anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm very excited. Also, just like, I'm like Googling really quick. It looks like maybe, I don't know if the access is there, but like, coasttocoastam.com has a bunch of stuff that could mean that you can get access to archives of stuff. So I might like throw that on the next time I'm like working from home.
Nice.
I might listen to some old school stuff. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say that like, oh, this like Coast to Coast like made me who I am today as a podcast. Like, no, but it was very interesting to me.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So, links to all of this stuff is in the show notes of this episode. Sam, how would you like to go into, how would you feel going in? I don't know how to phrase this. How would you like, there we go, to go in to our feature review of the evening of Hard Eyes?
Let's do it.
Nice. All right, let's do it. So, of course, we're going to do a non-spoiler and spoiler review. Once we switch over to spoilers, I'll play a clip from the trailer and to give you time to acclimate to spoilers. But if you want to avoid spoilers, check the show notes for timestamps. Those show notes are also available at obsessiveviewer.com/OV466. And having said that, let's go into our review. Hard Eyes is in theaters now. It was released on February 7th. The premise, according to IMDb, is for the past several years, the Hard Eyes killer has wreaked havoc on Valentine's Day by stalking and murdering romantic couples. This Valentine's Day, no couple is safe. The movie was directed by Josh Rubin, and the writers were Philip Murphy, Christopher Landon, and Michael Kennedy, and the cast includes Olivia Holt, Mason Gooding, Jordana Brewster, and Devon Sawa. So Sam, what attracted you to Hard Eyes, and what were your expectations going into it, and how'd you feel?
I'm always game for a new slasher boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And this one looked really promising. I think one of the most important things about introducing a new slasher icon is they have to look really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe cool is a bad word. They have to have a memorable look.
Yes, they have to look distinctive.
Yes, there you go. And this guy this guy or woman,
mm-hmm.
or, could be anyone.
Yeah.
Has a leather hood that looks like the sort of thing you'd find at a sex shop.
Mm-hmm.
With the titular hard eyes, which glow red in the dark, which is super cool and scary. And so I was hooked from that image in the trailer. And I'm always game for a holiday themed horror movie. I think that's always a fun variation on the slasher genre. And I was really pleased with this one. I think it's not the first Valentine's Day themed horror movie.
Right.
There've been others. For me, one of the most memorable ones was called Valentine, which is sort of a Scream knockoff revolving around high school graduates. And Denise Richards is one of the actors in it. And there's My Bloody Valentine, of course. But I think this one is really unique in the sense that it genuinely aims to be a Valentine's Day romantic comedy.
Yes.
And it succeeds in that sense. It has a very charming couple at its center. There is great comedic tension between them. As I said in my review, their dynamic is kind of similar to Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan's and You've Got Mail. They have kind of like a rivalrous romance and reasons to be competitive with each other, which is a lot of fun to watch. And it's basically Yeah, I think you'll get a kick out of the opening of my review where I reference Scream, actually.
Nice.
When Sidney Prescott says, why can't my life be like a Meg Ryan movie instead of a slasher movie? And so, like, this movie, Hard Eyes, would be her worst nightmare because
Yes.
it's basically a Meg Ryan romantic comedy that a slasher disrupts. So I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and that is that's such a great connection to make too. I love that. And I am also firmly in the camp of, being interested in new slashers, new ideas for slashers, even though, like you said, this has been at this point relatively well-trodden territory with Valentine's Day as a setting. But what I found really interesting about this is the way that it's about a killer targeting couples and how it sets out to be this, like you said, this combination of romantic comedy, like genuine romantic comedy between these two characters that at times it is incredibly like sweet and fun in terms of the kind of quirky like mismatch like romantic potential between them, and like the fun little like cliched like misunderstandings or miscommunications, what have you, like that's there. But then also the movie plays with those conventions in like an almost parody way, like they're having a moment like in their meet cute where it's like they're about to kiss and then something happens where like he gets a bloody nose because of an accident, and it's like just the way that it handles that is really satisfying to me. I will also say, and we'll talk more about in this kind of thing as we go on in the review, but you referenced Valentine, which I do like Valentine as well, but like it's funny because that was absolutely a Scream knockoff, and like Valentine, and like there was a run of slashers in the aftermath of 1996 with Scream, where there was just like immediate, like, okay, the market wants this slasher thing. And like, I even did like a Patreon like review of Scream Imitator. So I did like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, which technically, it's whatever, but, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Valentine, and two others that I can't remember, but that's up on Patreon. But what I found so interesting about Hard Eyes in relation to that is we've got movies like Hard Eyes and Thanksgiving a year or two ago, that I don't know what the beginning point of this was. I'm not going to say it's Scream 22, but it could be. But like, I feel like there's this like surge of slashers that are similar to like those slashers of the late 90s and early 2000s that are kind of, they're still solid movies, but they are kind of in the shadow of something greater. Not necessarily Scream 5, although I love Scream 5. I just bumped it up to 5 stars on my latest rewatch of it. But I don't know if that is the cultural point of cultural significance to bring about like a new slasher craze, or if it's something else, or if it's something I'm just putting out into the universe. But I love that we have movies like Thanksgiving and Hard Eyes, which we'll dig into it as we go on. Like, there are some issues that I have with it. There are like blemishes here and there, but like at the end of the day, it's still an entertaining slasher movie. And like, even though I have some issues with it, like I gave it I added a full half star to my rating specifically because it brought me back to the times where I was like obsessed with Scream and wanted to watch anything like remotely related to Scream. And so I would I Know What You Did Last Summer and Valentine, I would seek out these slashers, and like it took me back to that, and like it's so interesting that we're in that kind of space now with like even like high concept stuff like Time Cut, which wasn't good, and It's a Wonderful Knife, and another one that I can't really remember. Totally Killer. Just like this recent crop of like kind of discount slashers that are coming up. Maybe it's because of Christopher Landon, because he's done a lot in that space. But anyway, yeah. So that's where I'm at in positioning for this movie.
I love what you said about it in your Letterboxd review. You said something like it's the kind of movie where if it was released in the 90s amid the slasher resurgence, it would be marketed as being hip and scary.
Yes.
Which was like every slasher movie seemed to be going for that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, clever teenage characters like those in Scream. That's funny you mention that we're kind of in a period that mirrors the slasher resurgence of the 90s. And I am trying to think of stuff beyond the recent Screams that may have caused that.
Yeah.
I mean, were Scream 22 and Scream 6 like commercially successful? I mean, obviously
yes.
they like there was if you know Scream 5 led to Scream 6, but
right.
I'm trying to think of,
but like
I guess,
and this isn't necessarily, this is more a dig at Scream 4 than it is anything about Scream 6, but like Scream 6 was the most successful of the franchise, and in its opening weekend, it made more than Scream 4 made in its entire theatrical run.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's pretty successful, Sam.
No, that's not the tone that I was going to publicly say, but in my head, yes. Just kidding, of course.
Oh yeah, no. But I'm trying to think of other movies that may have like inspired this resurgence.
Yeah. I mean, looking at like Christopher Landon's work, like obviously like he worked on the Paranormal Activity movies, but obviously he had Happy Death Day to You, Freaky, the rest of his movies. So I want to say that he's maybe partially responsible for it. Plus like the rise of like Blumhouse as a studio that does low budget, acclaim worthy horror movies. Maybe it's not like a certain like one specific like inflection point for slashers. Maybe it's just like the era that we're in where horror is evenly distributed and divided around like different venues. Like we've got like I didn't mention this in the news roundup or anything, but like Robert Eggers doing like freaking like Nosferatu, like incredible like art house horror, like moody stuff. And then he's going to do a werewolf movie next, while I can't off the top of my head, I can't think of Focus Features, which is owned by the same that's Focus, Comcast. I don't remember who owns what, but like they're the same company, the same like company is doing like the Wolfman and Invisible Man movies. So it's like it's interesting to have like Universal, but like having like art house horror with Focus Features with Robert Eggers doing his thing, and then having like kind of failing for the most part, but like James Wan Universal monster movies, and then you've got like Steven Soderbergh doing Presence. So I don't know, maybe it's just like the landscape has changed, so it's not like a single thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I was like geeking out as you were mentioning all those movies because it is a really exciting time for horror right now. And I guess another thing I forgot to mention, another reason for the slasher resurgence, there was David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy,
Yes.
obviously. And that did well critically and commercially. And, Blumhouse, I think also they have their problems. I have committed to being the official guest for all the PG-13
Yes.
Blumhouse horror movies, of which there seems to be one every year.
Yes.
But it's an exciting time. It feels like Halloween may have played a part in it, and like Smile also did really well around this same time of year. It's just it might not be like any specific new slasher character, but it seems like horror is just very fruitful lately.
Absolutely. And plus I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we've also got Mike Flanagan just working incredible with like different things. I love Mike Flanagan. I'm definitely a Flana fan.
Nice. I like that.
But thank you.
Flana fan. I haven't heard that.
But also you referenced this movie last week, but and then we'll get back into the review. But I finally saw the trailer for Drop, and like looks freaking awesome.
I feel like it gives a little too much away.
Oh, 100%. Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm still gonna see it opening weekend. I mean, but so it obviously hooked me. I think the trailer could have been a little more of a teaser than it was.
It definitely gives off like that mid 2000s like high concept thriller, like kind of like Phone Booth or Cellular, and I'm just excited about it. And I'm also excited because Christopher Landon is making it, which I like and respect a lot of his work, and it's cool to see him get like a writing credit on this one for Hard Eyes, but also like him having something come out like after, exiting Scream 7 and all of that stuff. It's cool to see him have something interesting in the pipeline. But Hard Eyes, let's get back into the review. So it's really interesting that even with my misgivings of the movie, or my critiques of the movie that I'll get into, it really does feel like this kind of, I don't want to say throwback, but it does feel like it is of a certain era. Like it feels, and maybe this is me giving it too much of the benefit of the doubt, because like there are moments in this movie that should not work, like, and should not have worked for me. Like even early on, when you have the news footage of the Hard Eyes killer news stuff coming up, it's like there's something to the sound design. There's something to the performances of the people doing the newscasts where it almost like took me out of the movie, to the point where I was like, this is so like awkwardly written and awkwardly performed that it's like, it almost feels intentional. Like it doesn't feel real. Like it's not bringing me into the universe. And I don't know if that's intentional, but like, it was just like, this shouldn't work, but for some reason it does. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the introduction of Hard Eyes as a killer, like within the real world by the news footage. It is like very heightened, and sort of almost played for laughs. but you're right that it does kind of work, and like it does feel like a throwback too, in the sense of being a slasher movie like Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer that has a really great opening sequence to kind of hook you right away. And plus it opens with a 90s staple song.
Yes.
And there's this great sort of like romantic comedy scene within the opening that is really funny and kind of pokes fun at the idea of the perfect couple, and there's a a really great death scene within the opening. I don't think that's really giving much away. I mean, it's pretty much revealed in the trailer. But it sets up the killer in a great way. Like
absolutely,
he's menacing. With the kill, you get the sense that he's not fucking around. Like it's gory and graphic and crazy. So right away it hooked me.
Yeah, and even that like that schmaltzy like romantic comedy kind of setup with like even that, like it could have, like it's not what you would expect in terms of it, like there are layers to it. Like I would think that, oh, they could have just gotten away with presenting it like it's like a genuine like romantic comedy moment or a genuine like sequence of that nature, and then shock us with the hard eyes killer stuff as a means to kind of like present it as one thing and then do the slasher thing. But what I love about it is that it also pokes fun at just like the conventions of like the romantic comedy by having it be this very staged thing, but also like this over the top, like false, not like faux emotion for the camera and for the audience as well. Like it just feels just so clever in a very Kevin Williamson way, which like I feel, and one of the big issues that one of the big problems or sadnesses that I have about Christopher Landon not doing Scream 7 is that I feel like he is the type of person who has proven that he can subvert the horror genre in very, dare I say, cool, hip ways that would have been just right at home in the Scream franchise had he been able to make his Scream 7. But like I would assume that moments like that in this movie and the moments that poke fun at like romantic comedies and are subverting our expectations, I would assume that that's part of Christopher Landon being on board as a writer on this movie.
Oh yeah. That's a great point. And another thing that makes the opening kind of brilliant is that it's not, I mean, I think it works as like a self-contained sequence, but it also sort of perfectly sets up why the main characters, especially the character of Allie, why she is so cynical about love.
Yeah.
After seeing like how manufactured a relationship can be in the opening sequence with the sort of staged proposal, like it kind of sets up a reason for her to be cynical about Valentine's Day and romance and the Mason Gooding character seems like he walked out of a Hallmark movie. Like it kind of I don't know, it perfectly sets up like how manufactured and sort of artificial romance can be.
Yes. The it all goes back to the Valentine's Day of it all. Like, it's a Hallmark holiday. It's really strong on that front. The other thing I really liked about the movie is its overall concept that I kind of wish would have been a little bit more explored, I guess, is the idea of it being that, oh, this is a killer who has been operating for multiple years. Like, it's been, I think, like 2 years, or maybe 2 years ago was the last time. But it's like the Hard Eyes Killer is like a thing in this universe, and it's not contained to a specific city. It is like this year it's Seattle. Like a couple of years ago, it was like Philadelphia or something. And like, I thought that was really interesting. And I do wish that the lore of the Hard Eyes Killer was developed better and was a little bit more stronger written, because I do feel like the movie does lose itself a little bit in making us kind of care about everything related to the Hard Eyes Killer. Like, there was a point where I was like, okay, this is definitely like a Scream style slasher. And I'm like, throughout the whole movie, I'm like, I had two thoughts. And one was, are they just not going to make it a whodunit? Cause like, that's a staple of the slasher. Like, but I'm not seeing that here. I'm not questioning who is the Hard Eyes Killer or anything. And I feel like that is maybe a fault of the writing a little bit.
I agree. That's my major hang up about it, is that when it comes to unraveling the mystery of who the killer or killers are, when that's revealed, it's kind of like, oh, whatever. Like,
yes,
and plus, like, the opening, the first few scenes set up the lore in an appealing way. Like, he's targeting not only couples, but anyone looking for love. And it like sets up the degree to which he's really terrorizing entire cities, but it doesn't really take advantage of that concept.
Right.
Like, you don't,
absolutely.
Like, it would have been great to have seen other couples kind of feeling the tension of Hard Eyes being around.
Yeah.
But you really only follow the Allie and Jay character. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it didn't play up the aspect of he's terrorizing a whole city here.
Absolutely. And like, it feels like, in terms of like the writing, I do think one of my bigger issues with the movie overall is that, as fun and as well done as that whole meet cute thing is with Allie and Jay, throughout the first half hour of the movie, and this isn't a spoiler or anything, but I fully expected the movie to be like divided to where like, oh, this whole act is their meeting, and we're going to suddenly get like a jump to a year later where they're a couple and Hard Eyes is back. And like, I was expecting that because I felt like everything about Hard Eyes and about their kind of connection, and the kind of mood of the city as a whole just felt very underdeveloped in the first half of the movie, that I just felt like, oh, we're seeing the genesis of their relationship, and then we're going to jump a year later, and that doesn't happen. Like, it all takes place on like one night, and like, I respect it for that, but I also feel like they should have done a little bit more with developing really everything. Like, it felt very kind of like so many pieces of this movie felt almost there, but it just fell a little bit short in some pretty big spots, which we'll talk about in spoilers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even trying to think of how to set up like the mood of the city, and all you would really need would be like a montage of like people hiding out at clubs or something on Valentine's Day, or like people staying at the restaurants where they've booked reservations, like staying there past the closing of the restaurant, or like something kind of funny like that. Like, it's weird that they didn't set that up more.
Yeah, it was a little bit. It was very much a missed opportunity in terms of building atmosphere and everything. There were also some moments in the movie that felt like the movie was cut down a little bit. Like, unless I missed something, there is, like, after the introductory scene and after like the beginning of the movie, like there's a whole like kill that is just shown to us via news footage that happens like that same day. And it's like, wait, when did that happen? like, are you really going to just deprive us of a set piece this early in the movie? Like, it just felt like it was very much a missed opportunity to further like entrench us in the Hard Eyes Killer's MO and everything.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. Because the movie is kind of light on kill sequences.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not give us a few more? See, this happens every time I talk with you. It's like my thoughts on the movie kind of become a lot clearer than they were. Like, I wish I talked to you before I wrote my review. I'm thinking,
where you called it the greatest movie of all time. You also said they should have just shown this at the halftime show instead of Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, not my finest hour there. But I'm thinking of all these things and going like, oh God, I should have included that in my review. So I'm glad to have this as like a supplemental review.
Yeah.
Not that I like take back anything I wrote, but I just wish I added more to it. But that, again, that is your talent of what you pull out of a movie discussion.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I haven't read your review in full yet, but I'm sure it is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to rewrite the entire thing now.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, it's just like, fuck Kendrick Lamar. Weird. Like, it's weird that
I did not write that.
Just kidding, of course. We don't want that heat on us. But why don't we go ahead and go into spoilers for Hard Eyes? Is there anything you want to talk about in non-spoilers before we go into spoilers, I should say?
No, I think it'd be better to discuss things in spoilers.
Same here. So I ended up rating this on Letterboxd 3.5 stars. Again, I mean, just the nostalgia of it being like kind of a throwback to Scream knockoffs. Like I referenced I Know What You Did Last Summer and Valentine, but also Urban Legend is another big one. And to an extent, like Final Destination, those movies. But anyway, yeah, so I ended up rating it 3.5 stars. A half star of that is solely because of the nostalgia. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Sam, what did you rate it on Letterboxd?
I went with 3.5 as well.
Nice.
And part of my reasoning was nostalgia too. Like, I kind of felt the same way about this movie that I felt about Scream knockoffs at the time. Like, I mean, essentially what you just said, like, it's like I enjoyed it because it's so similar to other things I liked.
Yes.
That it kind of scratched a nice itch for me. It doesn't really hold up quite as well upon further reflection. Now I think it fucking sucks. I'm just kidding.
Thought it was gonna be great, but it fucking sucked. I think you should leave sketch.
Oh yeah.
I immediately thought of that.
But yeah, I went with 3.5 as well.
Nice. Yeah. We're both positive on it, even though we have pointed out some issues with it. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and go into spoilers. So once again, if you want to avoid spoilers, check the show notes for timestamps. Again, those are at obsessiveviewer.com/OV466 or in the show notes of whatever podcast app you're using, or in the description of the YouTube video that you're watching or listening to. With that, I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling Hard Eyes.
For the past 2 years, a masked maniac known as the Hard Eyes Killer has stalked,
hunted,
and brutally slain couples on Valentine's Day.
With no motive yet uncovered.
This is more than just murder. He's like Cupid with a kink.
All right, so spoilers on for Hard Eyes. Yeah, so something I want to talk about is how really how ridiculously obvious the whodunit of it all was. Like when Jay is put into the car, when the whole Hobbs and Shaw thing was it was cute, it was funny, but when Shaw puts Jay in the car to take him, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's the killer. It's like that. And then when it's revealed that there's two, it's like, oh yeah, it's the IT guy, because he's like the only other person that's still alive who had a speaking role in the movie. So like it just felt like really, who's not like connected to anyone in the movie. So it just felt like, I don't know, it just felt very like, okay, we're running up to the final act of the movie. Let's see what happens. And it was just like, kind of what I expected, basically. Yeah. So how did you feel about that? And free reign on spoilers on Hard Eyes.
Yeah, I felt a similar way. And I said in my review, like the movie does such a good job of creating chemistry between Allie and Jay and really developing their characters that it's hard to care about who the killers are because we don't spend as much time with them. And as I was writing that, I was thinking like, well, that's kind of a silly point because of course we don't spend as much time with them. But then I remembered the original Scream, and the reveal of the killers is shocking because you do kind of get to know Billy and Stu pretty well. And but with this, when it turned out to be the cop and the IT guy, I was like, who gives a shit? Yeah. And also to your point about the Scream thing of it all, like Billy and Stu were like connected to everything. Like it, like it made sense. Like here, it's just boils down to like our kink is killing people. Okay, fine. Like, all right. It felt like such an afterthought. Like, yeah, like, and I mean, you could kind of make an argument for the slasher elements as a whole. Like they kind of play second fiddle to all the romantic comedy / drama. And I mean, I enjoyed it as a romantic comedy, but one thing I do want to spoil is I really enjoyed how abruptly Hard Eyes interrupts Allie and Jay's kind of date. She basically opens her closet and throws her vibrator at him. Yes. And I just thought like, okay, here we go. This movie is going to be nuts.
Yes.
And it doesn't quite, like, I really appreciated how abrupt that was and how crazy it was. But the rest of the movie doesn't quite match that. I thought the kill set piece in the van with the hippie couple like having sex and then they're interrupted by Hard Eyes, like that was good. It's unfortunate how much of that is spoiled in the trailer.
Yeah. As a set piece, like I thought it was hilarious to me, specifically because it's like, because they're using that time not only to have it be this like comedic slasher moment that like we're laughing because of the situation, but we're aware that, you know, he's about to kill them. But like they also use that time to further like develop the characters of Allie and Jay and like have their heart to heart in that moment. So like I respect the way that it kind of brought so many things together in that moment. Yeah, and I like the idea of the drive-in theater as like the whole idea that like, oh, we just lured a serial killer to a buffet, to whatever the line is, and like I like that, but it also felt again like the movie is hampered by something, whether it be budget, whether it be timing, whether it be whatever. But it felt like, oh yeah, okay, we can shoot a lot of the movie in this police station, but then we need a big set piece. So we'll do like a drive-in theater and then we'll finish off in like a church. And it's just like, it feels like those are just locations and not like, it doesn't feel like Seattle. It doesn't feel like a city. It doesn't feel like to your point, it doesn't feel like we are existing in this world that Hard Eyes is tormenting. It's just like these two people are on a pseudo date and they're getting, chased around and everything, which is fun, but it just doesn't feel, there's something missing that I can't really quantify.
I think that's a great point, and not to get you wildly upset, but it reminds me of one of my hangups about Scream 6, which is that kind of feels like it could have taken place anywhere, or in any city. Like, it's like the big draw of that movie was Ghostface goes to New York, basically. Like, that's a great elevator pitch.
Yeah,
but it's not very New Yorky.
No, we got a bodega and a Subway.
Right,
that's about it.
And like, I know, like the clash against that criticism is people saying like, well, what did you want? Like a chase through the Statue of Liberty? And it's like, well, yes,
yeah,
I did. Or at least like something. I mean, with Seattle, you have the Needle, which is an iconic building. There's nothing really done with the city. I mean, for example, like, it's a cool sequence when Allie is on a carousel, but it's kind of like out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And secluded from the rest of the city. And I mean, I realize that there's budgetary stuff to consider, but I don't know. You're right that it feels like something is missing, and that I mean, obviously, like, Seattle is good in the sense that it seems like it's satirizing Sleepless in Seattle to some degree. But like, I don't know. It like, if you're gonna do a slasher in a city, like, do a slasher in a city.
Yeah, especially when you're setting up, like, presumably, I would say that they would have maybe wanted to leave the door open for sequels and to franchise it. And like, by its structure, like having the idea of the Hard Eyes Killer be like preying upon different cities in different years, like that opens the door to like, oh yeah, you can franchise the hell out of this. You can make like an Indianapolis based one. And like, to not then to make the effort, or to put the effort into making it be a countrywide like issue where this killer is killing people in certain cities on certain years, and to not make it distinctively Seattle, not make the city distinctive in any real way, is just a really big missed opportunity, and it kind of just didn't really sit right with me.
And it's funny because I'm thinking of other slasher movies, and like the original Scream does so much more with its small town than this movie does with an iconic city.
And even like Scream 2, like that's obviously it's not Woodsboro, but like they made that movie a college movie, like a college set movie that feels like it's at a college. And like, maybe that's not like a 1-to-1 kind of comparison, but like, it just didn't feel distinctive in this movie there wasn't anything very distinct about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably the drive-in sequence is the best sort of horror movie sequence. It gives a sense of the population, like there's a lot of people in that scene. They get to hide out in a like more engaging way, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, there has been talk of a Hard Eyes sequel already, so maybe this one will have a bigger budget.
That would be cool, because like again, we both liked the movie. Like it's an enjoyable movie, but like I think back to like I've compared it to Thanksgiving before, but like one of the things that I just loved about Thanksgiving was that it, no pun intended, did not leave anything like off the table. Everything, like Eli Roth, he's a mixed bag of a director, probably more misses than hits with me, but like they put everything Thanksgiving into that movie. And like for now there to be a movie about like Valentine's Day and everything, it just feels like there's so much they could have done with just like the concept, and like not even just the concept of it being set during Valentine's Day, or it like having like, you know, a restaurant filled with couples and everything, or having like different like schmaltzy sort of like romantic vomit inducing things. I'm single if you can't tell. But like different things like that, and different things tied to Valentine's Day. But they don't. And I feel like I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but basically like they don't really do anything to make it distinguish it for that. Oh, that was where I was going with that. Also, just the concept of the killer going after couples specifically, like that opens up like this really, like a really interesting way to create really dynamic set pieces in a slasher. Because the conceit is that he's going after couples, he's going up against two victims at once. And like the way that those can be choreographed and those can be set up, and like the ways that opens up in terms of creating interesting slasher set pieces is something that I also think was like, there's plenty of that here, but it doesn't feel like there was much thought put into them that there could have been. So, yeah.
I totally agree. And I think the only kill sequence that really takes advantage of that notion of, you know, going after two people is probably the drive-in, where he essentially kills two people with one tire iron.
Yes.
But also I think like there's not a feeling that it's Valentine's Day in the city. Like, for example, when Allie and Jay have their dinner date, the restaurant is not really overwhelmingly crowded with people. Like, they very quickly get a table, Like not even Patrick Bateman would have gotten a table at that restaurant.
Right.
And
like that could have been a good opportunity to fill out the atmosphere too. Like, oh yeah, well, we got this last minute reservation because Hard Eyes is back and, you know, couples don't want to be out in public or anything. But they didn't do that.
Yeah, and like that's even just all they would need is one line of dialogue.
Yeah.
To set up that atmosphere. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that atmosphere wasn't more developed because it's really not hard.
No.
I mean, like you just said, all you needed is someone to say, you know, couples are scared.
Yeah.
So like we're empty, and that would have been fucking great.
Oh, absolutely. And like again, the kills could have been so much more tied to like Valentine's Day. Also, like there are so many like things about Valentine's Day that can be appropriated for like a slasher, like anything involving chocolates, like doing like big like tableaus of things, and kind of like, I don't know, it felt like there were a lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah. That's a shame really, because well, going back to Thanksgiving, like that movie did a great job of setting up the atmosphere of the holiday. Like there's the shopping sequence, of course, where people are like stampeding in a store. Like why wasn't there any? And plus, like, you wouldn't even need to have, like you just said, you wouldn't need to have a lot of people. Like you could show places being sparse because of Hard Eyes, and that wouldn't have affected budgetary concerns or anything, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, so that's really frustrating that they didn't go for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do like the drive-in sequence and everything, but I also felt like there just wasn't any kind of connective tissue. Like, I felt like none of the characters, like, we're introduced to throughout the movie, like, really matter. Like, her best friend is like, she talks about how she has like a sugar daddy boyfriend, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna come into play in some way. It doesn't at all. She runs into her ex and his new girlfriend. That doesn't really do, like, that brings about like them kissing and everything, but it's also like when I see movies like this, I'm thinking of the Scream effect, where we are introduced to a group of people and then those people become like fodder for the killer. And like, we didn't get that here. It's just like, oh, cool. You know, she has a best friend. Cool. She has a boss. All right, let's go to a movie theater or a drive-in and kill a bunch of random people. It felt very, very, very mishandled there. Although Devon Sawa does get killed kind of brutally, which was kind of fun, but still.
Yeah, and that police station sequence is pretty long. Like,
yes,
it kind of drags on forever, and it kind of slows down the movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, but all it, I mean, thankfully it does have a really good couple at its center going for it. And I do like the idea of them kind of forced to compete with each other because of her doing this disastrous Valentine's Day ad, where she like shows iconic couples throughout history dying because her relationship failed. Like, that's great.
I loved that, especially when it was like brought to the attention that it's like, you did this when there's a killer that kills couples out there.
Right.
Like, I thought that was good.
Like a great way of kind of making it timely and you know, they have this sense of competition which kind of recalled You've Got Mail for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's I don't know. There's so much more that could have been explored, and it's kind of odd what the filmmakers chose to focus on instead. It's like, I maybe we didn't need a 20-minute police station chapter
right
in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. Plus they really they really telegraphed the whole spoon thing. Like, by the end of the movie, the run up to the end of the movie, I was like, okay, well, she hasn't killed someone with the metal spoon that they or not spoon, but straw. Sorry. The metal straw that they've been referencing this entire movie. So that means the movie's not over yet. Like, that's not going to come into play until the finale. And like, it does. And it's fun, but it's also like, okay, maybe conceal it a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, but we might be nitpicking a little bit here. One thing I did also enjoy was the when she shoots at Hard Eyes in the interrogation room, and like we get the kind of Dumb and Dumber-esque, like, oh, thank you, you're a terrible shot. Because it makes sense. Like, why would she be able to shoot a gun well if presumably she's never fired a gun? Yeah, so I like that.
That's a good point. Yeah. And I liked certain aspects of that chapter of the movie. I just it does feel like the movie kind of grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
When they get to the police station.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. But yeah, again, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun as a Scream knockoff-ish sort of movie. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. Do you have any other spoiler thoughts that we haven't touched on or you want to talk about?
I don't think so, really.
Nice. Yeah, me neither, really.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I would be game for a sequel.
Yeah.
I think there are other types of romantic movies that they could kind of play off of.
Yes.
This goes for a very traditional sort of Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks type of romantic movie. I think there's plenty of other types that you could drop Hard Eyes into.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we didn't really talk about him all that much, but I am just a massive fan of Mason Gooding. Like, he's been in some great stuff, including Scream and Scream 6, and Scream 7 coming up. But yeah, it's a blast to see him pop up so much in horror movies, really. So yeah.
Yeah, he's great in this, and I thought Olivia Holt was really good.
Me too.
Devon Sawa was fun.
Yeah.
Michaela Watkins as
the boss,
kind of head of this advertising firm. She was a hoot.
Yep. Yeah, well, that is our review of Hard Eyes. It is in theaters now. Once again, we both rated it 3.5 stars, and it's in theaters. Check it out so that we get a sequel, because I enjoyed it for what it is. It was actually fun, despite any of the lots of misgivings I had about it. But Sam, thank you for joining me for this feature review. We are going to go into a secondary review, and then we'll come back and do a potpourri section.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So we're going to say goodbye to Sam briefly, and I'll do my secondary review. And then when we come back from that, we'll do potpourri. So before we get to our secondary review, I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you like the show, please take a moment to follow us on social media and subscribe to and rate the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or whatever your preferred podcast app is. And don't forget to subscribe to the Obsessive Viewer Podcast YouTube channel as well, where I'm posting more and more videos and some like short form content as well. And make sure you subscribe to the show, like I said before, so you never miss an episode. And if you're interested in starting a podcast of your own, you can go to Libsyn and use the promo code OBSESS. When you sign up for a new account, you'll get up to 2 months free, depending on when you sign up, and we'll get a commission on it as well. More details on that are in the show notes of the episode. And now back to the show.
Tell me I view obsessively.
There she is. West Tower Observation Post. Your home for the next 365 days. There is no outside communication here.
What's that on the other side?
That is East Tower. Contact with the other side is strictly forbidden.
So what's the mission? To keep people from going in the gorge?
No. You need to stop what's in the gorge from coming out.
What the hell is that?
The gorge is the door to hell. And we're standing guard at the gate.
All right, and for this week's secondary review, I'm going to share my thoughts on The Gorge, which is premiering on Apple TV Plus tomorrow, if you're listening to this day of, on February 14th. The movie is directed by Scott Derrickson and written by Zach Dean. And the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb, is two highly trained operatives become close after being sent to protect opposite sides of a mysterious gorge. When an evil emerges, they must work together to survive what lies within. The movie stars Miles Teller, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Sigourney Weaver. And like I said, it's going to be premiering on Apple TV Plus tomorrow. And it's actually the reason why this episode went up a little bit later than usual. Usually I like to post these on or right at midnight on the day of release on Thursday. But the actual embargo for this movie lifts at noon on Thursday, so I had to delay releasing this episode about 12 hours. So apologies for that. But let me talk about The Gorge. First of all, I think a couple of weeks ago when Brent was on, I think this movie popped up in conversation, or maybe it wasn't recorded, I'm not sure, but we talked about it, and he said in some capacity that he was wondering if this movie, I think it was him, was wondering if this movie was originally supposed to be a theatrical release and is an Apple TV Plus movie now. Because they're scared of theatrical releases or what have you. And so I went into this movie thinking about that, thinking that, okay, I wonder if this movie was supposed to be a big theatrical release. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think Nick may have brought that up. I don't know. Someone brought it up at some point to me in my life. And so that kind of put it in my head that, yeah, this was maybe supposed to be a theatrical release, especially with Scott Derrickson at the helm. Like, he's kind of he's a reasonably large name in filmmaking right now. And plus the cast. I mean, you've got Sigourney Weaver returning to a sci-fi horror kind of genre playground. She's not really in the movie all that much. Of course, this is going to be a non-spoiler review, so don't worry about any of that. But she has a very small part in the movie, kind of to the detriment of the movie. And Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller, directed by Scott Derrickson, I would have thought, like, oh yeah, this is a prime kind of movie to have a theatrical release. But watching the actual movie, it struck me in a couple of ways. One is that this is going to be a cheap shot, but it feels like, oh, okay, yeah, I forgot Apple TV Plus, like Apple TV, they gave all their money to like Scorsese to do Killers of the Flower Moon, so they had to skimp on some of the production stuff for their other movies because some of the visual effects in this movie are kind of cringe-inducingly bad, to the point where when you get to seeing some of the kind of creature effects of the things that are in the gorge, it almost took me out of the movie, to the point where it was a little bit, it wasn't comically overdone or it wasn't comically underdone even, but it was just one of those things where it felt like at the development phase, they didn't really, they were wary of what budget they had, and so they presumably, this is my reaction to it, is that it feels like they patterned what the design was going to be around what the budget was going to be, which is fine. Like that's what movie making is. That's what filmmakers do. They work around a budget and they do that. Not disparaging that, but it just feels like it feels very much like underdone. Like it wasn't like they allocated enough resources to really make convincing creature effects. And it just kind of feels a little bit awkward. But I can't really talk more about that without going into spoilers, which I'm not going to do. So I'll kind of leave it at that. But something that I really kind of appreciate about this movie is that kind of connection between Miles Teller's character and Anya Taylor-Joy's character. So these are two like elite like military operatives. Like Miles Teller is a retired Marine who takes like contract work, mercenary work. He's a very accomplished sniper, and he's got some skeletons in his past. He's got some PTSD that he's working through and everything. And then Anya Taylor-Joy is Lithuanian, and she's kind of a contract like sniper who is conscripted to do this task of basically just monitoring this gorge in the middle of a country that they're not aware of where they are, because they're kind of blindfolded and taken there. They're not supposed to contact each other in any way. And they're there for a year. And essentially, like it said in the trailer, it's essentially that the things in the gorge are like the responsibility of Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy is to keep them out of the world, to basically snipe them, to kill them, to shoot them, to prevent them from escaping from the gorge. And that's kind of the jumping off point for the story. But what I appreciate about the story and about the movie itself and the way it's kind of structured and the way that it handles its kind of very isolated two-hander story that it's telling is that it really builds up this connection between Miles Teller's character and Anya Taylor-Joy's character. So it builds up this connection that they forge, this kind of communication that they are able to make, and the contact that they make throughout the course of working this just menial job, really, where they're just monitoring this chasm across the way, like they're in opposite towers across the gorge. And in that respect, it kind of feels like the movie is sort of like the movie feels like it is. It feels like it comes from like a dystopian YA novel, and that's not like a derogatory thing. I'm not saying that to throw shade at it or anything, but it feels like the type of story that you would find in a young adult dystopian mystery or dystopian future kind of movie or story. And like there's nothing wrong with that, but it just felt kind of weird, because as much as I was kind of into that in the first half and really into the connection and the relationship that forms between these two characters, once it gets to the point where there's a pivot in the story where we are like it holds back telling us about what's in the gorge and like what the lore of this story is. And then there's a pivot where it gets deeper into that and it changes pace quite a bit. And it really dives into what's going on, which on the surface, I really respect that. And I enjoy that because with that structure, it's able to keep us engaged with the two characters. So when they're in like danger, when they're put in danger, and when there's things that are going on that they need to survive, that gives us a strong connection to them. That gives us a level of emotional connection with the characters that we wouldn't have if we didn't spend an hour really like in their shoes and really like witnessing their connection grow over the course of the first hour of the movie. So I really commend the story for that, and I really commend the screenwriting for that, because that really drew me in, and that was really satisfying. But once we get to that pivot, and once we get to more answers about what's in the gorge and what the entire lore of it all is, it kind of loses a lot of steam, because I just didn't really care about anything that was really being communicated. Like the backstory, the truth behind it, or whatever, the reveals of the mysteries just felt very it felt very just cheap, honestly. And I just looked it up, and Zach Dean, the screenwriter, he also wrote The Tomorrow War, which was another movie that I found really promising when it came out in, I think, 2020. But ultimately it was kind of just disappointing and completely forgettable, which I think that this movie it was in 2021 that The Tomorrow War was. But I think that this movie is going to kind of fall under that same kind of fine entertainment, but it's one of those things, kind of like Hard Eyes, honestly, where it has its faults, it has its issues, but it's nothing that is too detrimental to the enjoyment of the movie, specifically because it's not really offering us much in the realm of getting emotionally invested in the lore and the mythology of the movie and of the universe that's being presented. Instead, we're emotionally connected to these two characters, and we're invested in whether or not they survive this ordeal. But everything else just kind of plays second fiddle to that. So I don't really care about what they learn about what's in the gorge, and what the kind of the backstory that's fleshed out in that second half of the movie. I'm just like, yeah, okay, it's kind of a rote, kind of cliched plot device that's kind of explored in the last half of the movie. And I won't go so far as to say it was like that I was engaged by it or interested in it really, but I mean, it wasn't too much of a distraction. It didn't detract my attention too much. I was kind of along for the ride. And I think that that's kind of the kindest thing that I can say about it, is I was along for the ride, and it was fun. It was fine. It was okay. I could be a total cynic about this, and I could dive deep into how it's a little bit derivative of other movies and other stories that I found that were really done a lot better in previous installments and previous iterations of this type of story, multiple iterations really. But by itself, The Gorge is solid. It's totally. It's not a waste of time. I'm not giving it a hard sell, but I'm just saying that, you might enjoy it especially if you're a fan of that type of dystopian YA story type. Not that it falls under this category at all, because they're not young adults. They're not. It's not a dystopian future. It's just that's kind of the vibe of it. So it kind of feels like a little bit, in terms of the overall tone and idea of it, feels at home in the 20 teens, where we had a lot of the Hunger Games knockoffs and the Maze Runner and all of Insurgent or Divergent or whatever, these types of movies and these types of stories. It feels like there are sprinkles of those ideas or those tones in The Gorge, but The Gorge is told in a very straightforward way, and it's a present day kind of thing. So yeah, I will say the performances between Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy are really good. I really found them to be incredibly charming, and I know I dogged the writing a little bit, but honestly, the dialogue between them was really charming, really engaging, and I felt very pleased with their growth throughout the movie. Like, I really wanted to root for them, and I really found myself finding resonance in their chemistry and their the emotional stakes of the movie. Unfortunately, that's offset by not having very interesting story, like a very interesting story or backstory or lore within the movie. But what it does do, it's passable. It's passable, and it's not going to be a waste of time. So that's about all that I have for The Gorge. Once again, it is streaming on Apple TV Plus as of February 14th. 2025. So check it out and let me know what you think of it. And I think that's about it for this secondary review. This is going to be kind of a little bit of a lengthy episode, as they usually are. So we're going to round it out with some potpourri. Let me bring back Sam Watermeier to close us out with a potpourri section. So stay tuned.
They tell me I view obsessively.
Okay, and now that my secondary review has been secondary reviewed, we are back with Sam to close out the episode with a potpourri section. Of course, potpourri is a section of the podcast where we wind things down and we share some thoughts on movies or shows that we've seen or looking forward to, whatever we want, as long as it smells good. Sam, as you are the guest, first of all, welcome back. And what would you like to bring to the table for potpourri?
I'm going to bring something kind of strange, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay.
I have been rewatching, because I think it just recently came on Netflix. I've been rewatching the family sitcom Home Improvement.
Oh, interesting.
And honestly, it has not aged well. That that show, pretty problematic in a lot of ways now.
I bet.
And back then, but we were more accepting of some of the humor that it goes for. I'm still kind of having a blast with it.
Nice.
It's just like bringing up a lot of memories from childhood, and I think there is a certain charm to it. I'm curious, what part, if any, did Home Improvement play in your life?
Oh man, so Home Improvement was one of those shows that we watched it a lot when I was a kid. Like, we watched it a lot, but we watched a lot of TV, hence why I do what I do. But I think that I would say that Home Improvement was kind of like second or third tier from like what we like watched and consumed like passionately. So all that's to say that we watched it, like I enjoyed it at the time. Like, I can't imagine really, like, I don't know how I don't know if I should influence those memories, or if I should tarnish those memories by trying to rewatch it. And it's not necessarily that I think it'll be bad, and like, I don't want to get canceled or be woke or anything, but like, that's a joke. I don't give a shit. But the thing about it is that when this show was on, when Home Improvement was on, I was a kid. It was the 90s, and the person I am now is clearly not the person I was then. And like, I feel like revisiting it would probably be just like, okay, I've seen this type of like, conventional, like marriage joking family sitcom thing. Like, oh, he's a man's man, and she's like just puts up with him, and it's very much like male centric and masculine centric, and it's very much like a cliched thing. Like, I remember like every segment he did on Tool Time is like the man's whatever. It's like, seek therapy, man. So yeah, so I don't know. I feel like I'd I'd be curious if I would enjoy revisiting it, or if I would be a dumb liberal woke guy, which probably would be the case.
I'm gonna offer kind of a hot take.
Okay.
And maybe this is giving the show too much credit. But you said that, it kind of leans on these ideas of like alpha masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
Do you admit though that there is something kind of subversive in his total incompetence to be one of those males? Like he's constantly screwing up at it?
That is such a good point. That makes me want to give it a shot. And the interesting thing about that is I could totally see that being a read of the show for sure. I don't know that it would be like, I kind of feel like with Tim Allen, I wonder if that was the intention, if that was anything that was on the radar back then while filming it. I wonder if he was in on it. He doesn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I thought you were going to say the whole alphaness, like, is it why I've become such an alpha? Which I would say yes. Again, guys, I'm single.
No, I admit that, like, if that was the intention, Tim Allen probably didn't see it.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine him, like, willingly going for that just based on his persona.
And especially since he's made the same show over and over again his whole career, it seems. Like,
right.
His latest one with Kat Dennings is, like, he's, like... he has she's his estranged daughter who comes back to work at his mechanic shop because he's a man and working on cars. I don't know. Yeah.
Like, I think part of him is kind of, actually a large part, like earnestly selling the idea of a man's man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do think the show pokes fun at that idea, but I think he also probably sincerely believes it.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But maybe I'll give it a shot. Maybe I will fire up the old Netflix and see where it takes me with that. So that's interesting. How far have you gotten into it?
I'm kind of jumping around. I've been getting into later seasons. Because there's some like drama with their boys' girlfriends. Like there's an episode where Brad is dating a college girl while he's still in high school, and they get engaged, and of course Tim and Jill freak out about it. And I just, in like summarizing that episode, I realized like how lame it is. But I'm not like super, like, it's just enjoyable trash.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. Okay. I'll report back at some point and see how it fares.
Please do.
Nice. All right. Do you mind if I round out our potpourri section with my potpourri offering?
Please do.
All right. So in the grand new tradition of watching a movie that my guest has rated highly, this was kind of a twofer because I also watched this movie because a podcast I listened to covered it at some point. But it is 1999's But I'm a Cheerleader. Yeah, I watched this having no real idea about it. I didn't know what the tone was. I didn't know. All I knew was that it was about kind of not necessarily gender identity, but about sexual identity and a teenager exploring that. what I didn't expect was this just incredibly campy, colorful, like vibrant, like satire of like religious conversion therapy ideas, but also like it's poking fun at that, but it's doing so with this like with this thing that where it's like it's like it understands that it's not going to take down this whole idea, but rather it's like it's for the people, like it's for the queer audience to laugh at that kind of portion of religious zealotry and asshole behavior. So I don't know. I thought it was really, really funny and really fun, incredibly ahead of its time, being in 99 and being that openly like campy, that openly queer, and that openly just like satirizing of things that, like, my memory of 1999, granted I grew up in a very kind of like Republican household, was that like, oh, like the whole like don't ask, don't tell sort of idea of homosexuality and like sexual identity and everything. But like to see this as just an audacious, just again, campy and colorful, like the sets, the costuming, the color of it all is like every single scene is just like pink and yellow and like all of these like bright, loud colors. And I think that that's brilliant as a way to just be like, it's like the idea of pride and like being just like, I don't want to say this because it's going to sound like it's going to have like a connotation, but like very in your face. And I don't mean that at all in a derogatory way. I mean that in an empowering way. But also the great thing about this is, by the way, it's about a teenage girl who is sent to a rehab center with other homosexual teenagers who are basically a pray the gay away sort of environment. And she develops this relationship with Clea Duvall, and she's played by Natasha Lyonne. Their chemistry and the romance of it, the drama and the connection that they have, it's like, it is this perfect meld of the camp aspect of it, the camp over the top, just like really like heightened humor, surreal humor, with this just genuinely organic and lovely romance that blossoms throughout it. And I don't know, I really, really liked this movie, and I know that you rated it very highly. Sam, what did you think of But I'm a Cheerleader?
I am just delighted by your review.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you enjoyed it, and that was just beautifully said.
Thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree. You said something on Letterboxd and here, which I thought was a great point, was that like beneath all the campiness and color, there's this really earnest, heartfelt romance. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I fell in love with that movie.
Nice.
It's just like, it's totally my kind of movie. Like, I think aesthetically, it kind of reminds me of another one of my favorites, Edward Scissorhands.
Oh, yeah.
It has the sort of edgy, satirical vibe of sort of happiness. And movies like that. It also feels very of its time. It feels like a very 90s movie. I think it's probably the best thing Natasha Lyonne has ever done. I've always had a huge crush on her and Clea Duvall.
Mhm.
So them being together in a movie is like perfect for me.
Yeah.
I saw that relatively recently, and I had been looking forward to it for a long time, and I just kind of like instantly fell in love with it.
Nice.
So I'm really happy that you had the same kind of reaction.
Nice. Yeah, I was delighted that the stars aligned for me to watch it, because again, it was on covered on a podcast I listened to. So I'm so glad that I saw it, and I really liked it. So that is But I'm a Cheerleader. And I think that's it for this episode. Sam, before we go, could you tell people where they can find you online, and if you have anything coming up that you want to plug or bring attention to?
Sure, you can find my reviews at midwestfilmjournal.com or on Letterboxd at Sam Movie Man. You can find that Quill Magazine article I mentioned earlier at quillmag.com. I guess the next thing I have coming out is a review of The Monkey, which is probably, my most anticipated next to Friendship right now.
Yeah.
Thanks again for having me. It's a blast as always.
Of course.
I look forward to my 18 appearances after this.
Yes, as do I. And thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, like it's a blast, like you said. The blasting is all on my end as well. That's weird.
That sounded very wrong.
It sounded very, very, very in a way. Well, that's it for this week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer, and maybe the entire Obsessive Viewer conglomerate. But as always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow the show on social media and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred podcast app. Also, check out our other shows, Tower Junkies and Anthology. More info on those shows can be found at obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts, which I think is the link, or just check the show notes of this episode. Next week on the show, I'm going to be reviewing Captain America Brave New World, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the secondary review. Maybe I'll circle back and do Love Hurts, or maybe I'll find something else. I'm not sure, but we'll see next week on the show. Until then, thank you once again, Sam, and thank you, the listener, for listening, and we'll see you next week. And now, enjoy this short clip from a recent Patreon-exclusive episode. For the full episode and more Patreon-exclusive content, sign up at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. So, and again, gorgeous cinematography, absolutely gorgeous filmmaking. It looks absolutely astounding, especially those, again, the kind of wide angle, like top-down view, not top-down, but kind of angled view from the heavens, seeing like how vast the wilderness is and everything is amazing. And I also like the makeup effects of the wardrobe design of like the four of them being in like winter attire, all black against the white background of like the snow and the environment. Thank you for listening to the Obsessive Viewer podcast. This episode was produced and edited by me, Matt Hurt. If you have feedback, thoughts on our episodes, or just want to connect, you can email me at matt@obsessiveviewer.com. For more information on this show, including a full archive of our episodes and show notes, visit obsessiveviewer.com. And if you enjoyed the show, please give us a follow on social media and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. Also, consider rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible to help increase our visibility and grow our community. If you want to support the show and get early access to new episodes, as well as a steady stream of exclusive episodes, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. For information on more podcasts presented by obsessiveviewer.com, visit obsessiveviewer.com/podcasts. Our theme song is A Little Mad Sometimes by As Good As It Gets. For more of their music, check them out on Spotify and at asgoodasitgetsmusic.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.